Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another live stream. If you're tuning in, this live stream is going to be about Wicca. It's this time of the season, especially in the West in America. I'm not sure about other countries. I know I have a pretty diverse audience, but it's this time of the season in the West where paganism and things like that are just really popular because Halloween is right around the corner, and so topics about paganism, Satanism, or anything like that get really, really popular. And I was scrolling through YouTube and social media and things like that, and I've been seeing quite a bit of things in my feed that's being fed to me by the YouTube and all that jazz and suggested that revolve around these sort of topics. And again, it's because right now stuff like that is trending. And as a Christian, obviously, I don't agree with most pagan practices. I don't agree with a lot of things that they believe and profess. But I will admittedly say that I haven't necessarily studied deep into what they believe or anything like that. But I did notice that there's a lot of videos going around right now that are just really popular for some reason about Wicca and about things like this. And that's why today I'm going to be reviewing Anthony Padilla. I think that's how you say his last name, Anthony, though. I don't know much about him personally. I don't know much about his channel necessarily as a whole. I think he interviews a lot of just different people from different backgrounds, and I don't know exactly what he believes particularly. But I saw that he did a video where he talked to some Wiccan priests and allowed them to do some spells at the end. So I think it's broken into like 5 different segments, something like that, where he like talks about the origins of Wicca, what they believe, stuff like that, and then lets them do their thing. I'm gonna go through this, piece through this a little bit, give you guys my thoughts, pause it every once in a while, and just tell you what I'm thinking, where they're right, where they're wrong, or where I disagree, or at least my thoughts in general. And so I think this is going to be interesting. I think it's going to be interesting for me because it's going to be a learning experience for me. It's also, I think, going to be interesting because I don't honestly know that much about it. But I am admittedly sort of skeptical about things like this. So we'll see how this all goes and what happens. So yeah, but thank you for joining in. If you're joining in after the live stream, you can obviously skip ahead a couple minutes and you'll be right into the video where I'm reacting and we're watching the video and going through it and giving commentary. If you're joining in on live stream, thank you for coming in. You can interact with the live chat if you are a subscriber. So you need to be a subscriber to be on the chat. But yeah, so thank you for joining. If you enjoy what you see, like, subscribe, and comment. Let me know what you think about Wicca. Let me know what your thoughts about this topic is as we go through it. But and also I want to say shout out, thanks to all of you guys. We have hit over 1,000 subscribers. That is absolutely awesome. I am very happy to see this. And I hope to keep producing content that you guys enjoy. And I keep hoping to bring together a diverse audience that just wants to keep learning about different religions and keep exploring things in a way that's engaging, fun, entertaining, and not just academic or boring. So let's just have some fun with it. And so today we're going to be reacting to Anthony and his whole interaction with Wiccan priests. So we'll see how this goes. Let's start the video.
I'm Anthony Padilla, and I spent a day with Wiccan high priestesses to learn the truth about the highly controversial beliefs and bizarre rituals of this occultist religion. Today, I'm gonna put their words to the test by allowing them to use me as a vessel to cast a spell. But what I really wanna know is this religion so controversial because it commonly empowers women? Or is it because of something much more nefarious? Like worshiping Satan?
Hello, Phyllis.
Hi.
Thorn.
Hey.
This episode is sponsored by BetterHelp Online Therapy. Visit betterhelp.com/Padilla because sometimes existing is exhausting. Now, how would you describe yourself? Wiccan, what kind of words would you use?
Generally speaking, I refer to myself as a Wiccan priestess.
Most of the time I just reach for witch.
Witch.
But witch is such a broad term these days that when I'm in the company of other practitioners, it's more helpful to define myself as Wicca.
Interesting.
What is the biggest misconception about Wiccans?
I guess it's still the old one that we're involved with Satan or something. But I'm sorry to say to those who believe that they're completely wrong.
There's some watching right now.
Yeah, well, I'm sorry, darling, but you're completely wrong. Satan is an Abrahamic figure. He exists within the pages of the Bible. He is their projection of evil, and they need to deal with him instead of projecting him onto other people,
That's an
especially us.
interesting
You are
statement.
one of America's.
So Okay, so far, obviously, it's just all introduction stuff. Interesting who he is, interesting who they are. I think it's interesting that that one lady is literally called herself a witch. I just think that's an interesting way to introduce yourself. Like, imagine going to some sort of like party gathering saying, "What are you?" "Oh, I'm a witch." But I just think that's an interesting word to use. I guess taking on. I guess if you take on the name, it gives it less power. I guess that's how the theory goes. But I want to focus a little bit more on what that lady said. I forget her name now already. But what that lady said about the projection of Satan. Now, I don't know exactly. I know I have a lot of like Muslim listeners and people from different religions that listen in on this. But I know from a Christian perspective, our belief about Satan isn't that he's just landlocked within the Bible. We believe that he is an actual angelic being that exists within the real world. That he's not just some sort of projection of evil or some sort of embodiment of evil or some sort of figurative figure, but he's a literal being that is evil, but he isn't necessarily evil itself. He does evil things, he's an evil creature, but he isn't necessarily the essence of evil. So the thing that I think that bothers me about that sort of statement is saying, oh, you can't project Satan to us because Satan's in the Bible. No, we believe that Satan is a real being. We believe the Bible's true, and we believe that Satan is a real being that is able to influence the world. We don't necessarily think that you need to openly worship Satan to be a Satanist or worshiper of Satan. So just because, for instance, you may believe that let's just say someone tells you you're eating pudding, and you actually are eating pudding, but you believe you're eating mashed potatoes, and you say, these are the best mashed potatoes I ever had. And no matter what your belief is, the truth of the matter is that you're eating pudding. So just because you say we're not worshiping Satan doesn't necessarily mean you're not worshiping Satan. You might not know you're doing it because you don't believe in him, or you don't believe that he is some sort of being that you're actually opening yourself up to. But it is at least possible that people worship Satan or do things for Satan that they're not even aware of it, or if they open themselves up to spirits and open themselves up to experiences, they might be opening themselves up to demons or things like that. So it's just an interesting thing to say, don't project Satan to us because we don't believe in that, and it's only in the Bible. So just let the Bible figure that out. No, we believe Satan has influence over the world, and he can influence you as well. And so it's kind of just a bad statement to say. But anyway, that's just a first thought of the day.
America's first public witches.
I am. Now the whole world is composed of witches. I was one of the first. There were very few of us that had the guts to come out, and I was a lawyer at the time on top of it all, in the very early 80s.
People were nervous about coming out as witches after the Salem witch trials in America. That makes no sense. Why would people be concerned about coming out as a witch?
I know, why are you so stressed, right? So, the witch craze was 500 years ago. Just the mere accusation of being a witch was enough to have you thrown in jail, tortured, murdered.
What do Wiccans believe?
We don't necessarily have a unified moral code, for example, or a unified...
All right. Well, two things here. First thing, it is true. There isn't necessarily a great history as far as how culture has treated, what European and American culture has treated witches in the past, or treated Wiccans or pagans and stuff like that in the past. There isn't necessarily a good, hearty, lovely, sort of history to that. There is some sort of bad blood, if you will. But I don't really want to focus too much on that. What I do think is interesting here is that she's saying there is no unifying belief between Wiccans. I think she goes on, I did piece through it a little bit again. I didn't watch all of it, maybe watched about a tenth of it. But she does say something about the fact that there's similarities in how they do practices and rituals, not similarities necessarily in belief. So again, in theory, if we go back to what that lady said about, well, we don't worship Satan, in theory, according to that idea, theoretically, someone could say they're a Wiccan and worship Satan because they don't have a unified belief system. Just an interesting thought.
Unified belief about what happens when we die or what gods are like. What we share tends to be ritual stuff.
Yeah.
What our tools
Practices
are,
and stuff
how
like
we
that.
frame our liturgy. What you do is more important to us, and what you do reflects your beliefs.
When people
That's true.
hear Wicca, they think witchcraft, they think satanic rituals.
There are no devils and demons and there's definitely no Satan. He is entirely a Christian character. He's their figure who personifies evil.
Again,
Can you
that
tell
goes
us
back
about
to the
the
fact that
history of
if you don't
Wicca,
believe
where
in
it
its
came
existence.
from, how long it's been around.
It's start your business time.
Again, it goes back to the fact that if you don't believe in Christianity or you don't believe in Satan's existence, you obviously aren't going to believe that you're worshiping him or that he's involved in anything you do. But then again, don't tell Christians that they're projecting onto them something, oh, don't project onto us Satan. We believe he actually exists. So if we say something you're doing we believe to be satanic, it's because we actually believe he's existing and that he actually has influence over you to a certain extent. You may not believe that, and maybe you're right, maybe we're right. Who knows? Like, I mean, obviously, I believe we're right, but that's why I believe it. But anyway, it doesn't necessarily mean you can just say, "Oh, you just stop projecting." You obviously have certain set of belief systems that you project onto the world and project onto others, and that's influenced how you perceive other people. That's how things happen too with other religions. Now, I don't know about like Islam, Buddhism, and all that stuff, what they believe about Satan or what they believe about evil angels or anything like that. Let me know in the comments section below what you all believe, from different backgrounds, different religions, what you believe about Satan, what you believe about devils or demons, or if you have anything sort of similar to that within your religions, let me know. I'm going to be honest, I don't know too much about demonology within other religions. But I just always think that's an interesting thing to say, that don't project something onto us that we don't believe.
The 1940s in England, there is this popular movement to start looking toward magic and the magical traditions of that area. And there's this guy named Gerald Gardner who comes out and he starts writing popular books. He has a tabloid presence, and basically he comes out and tells people, hey, I was initiated into this surviving witch cult. I've gotten permission to write about it and share it with the world. People start seeking him and various associates of his out for initiation. And eventually he initiates folks in the US, his books make it over there, and people begin spreading his tradition in the United States. The particular tradition that I follow goes back to that dude. He brought people in, they brought people in, they brought people in. I'm down here somewhere.
Like a pyramid scheme.
Yes, exactly. No, I'm stopping there. Absolutely not.
Is Wicca a modern religion or is it ancestral?
It wasn't called Wicca, but it existed more than 5,000 years ago.
I would
It was
believe
the
that.
indigenous wisdom tradition of Europe. Wicca tends to be the spirituality. It developed as a modern rebirth.
Would you say that the ritual?
I mean, if you go back thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of years ago, paganism, witchcraft, some sort of spiritual, mediators and necromancers and things like that have been around ever since all history, like all record. There's been people who participate in things like this and worship multiple gods and do rituals and do spells and magic. That's been around for thousands and thousands of years. I don't know specifically Wicca where it derives from necessarily, but that has obviously been around for thousands of years.
That was done to initiate you, changed you or the way you perceive the world.
I want to see something real quick. Awesome. All right, cool. Now,
Or made you feel differently? Was there some kind of value placed
Yes.
on that initiation?
I know some folks who will say that their initiations felt like a culmination of something. For other people, it's the moment itself is that transitory kind of explosive moment where suddenly you're different.
If I were a skeptic, I might hear things like, there was a guy at this point sometime within recent history that found this thing and then started spreading his word, and then people started becoming initiated into it. I would think cult.
Yeah. And that word was used. I think cult is one of those words where we use it usually to mean this religion over here that we don't like. People used to write about the cult of democracy in the United States, this idea of devotion to something, adherence to something. So it's really only in very recent decades that the word cult has come to have this blanket kind of negative connotation. But amongst my coven mates, yeah, we use the word cult.
Most people would.
that's interesting because, I mean, obviously, cult has a very specific definition. I'm sure people do. I mean, people do use it just as a blanket negative statement to describe any religion they don't like. That is true. There's going to be people out there who do that. But I don't necessarily think that just because someone refers to a certain religion as a cult that they're necessarily wrong. So a cult by definition is when one person is assumed to have a lot more power and be like either godlike or have a lot of power and stuff, and they culminate a following. And it's all focused around either one person or one central thing that is like normally earthly, like an organization, for instance. So like that is the strict definition of a cult. So technically speaking, I guess if Wicca is led by one sole leader, it could by definition be a cult. Are cults by definition necessarily negative? They have a negative connotation because a lot of times cults end badly and poorly, and a lot of times you see that with like David Koresh's cult or the Jonestown cult. So they normally end poorly. That's why they have a bad reputation. But by definition, cult in itself is just a neutral word. Hey, Summer, what's up? Hello from Portland. You are amazing. I love your channel. Thank you so much for the support. I see your comments in the comment section on a lot of videos, and I always appreciate it. So thank you for being a member on this channel, and thank you for chatting live. Thank you for joining us.
When they hear cult, assume that it means unquestioning devotion to a belief system that was taught to you.
And that definitely is not who we are. If we could be said to have a central virtue, it would be autonomy and personal authority. My devotion is to my tradition and to my gods. It's not to other witches, and it's certainly not to a founder.
Do you cast spells? Do
Interesting.
you use magic?
So what she just said there is no, I devotion to the gods and to my rituals or whatever. I forget what the second one. I just remember the one was the gods, but not to a founder. Interestingly enough, that's also often what people within what we might generally call cult would say. So, for instance, the what was that cult called? The one where they thought the Hail Mary, the comet was coming by. They would have said that they were worshiping, some other gods or stuff like that, but they were following the direction of a prophet, which was Ti and Do. And they would have been following them as prophets, but they weren't necessarily gods, quote unquote, I guess. So a lot of times people within cults would say that they're worshiping something higher than the leaders themselves, even though the leaders may be the main source of information that they have. But anyway, let's go into what they say are the magical experiences. Oh, we're going to have an ad here. Great.
Every family has members that are a little local.
Thanks, Summer.
Like
Thank
your
you for the
abuela,
support.
who yells at you every time.
Oh yeah, from the very beginning. If you ask most sort of young witches, they'll tell you that magic is the art of manipulating supernatural forces to manifest what you want. Not so much. I mean, that's kind of an old model.
What is the magic actually?
The magic is the flow of the sacred from energy into embodiment. Everything's interconnected. And that flow of connection, that relationship, that energy that moves back and forth between us and the plant, which could use a little more water and a little more sunlight.
Try not to talk about that.
Physicists now talk about 13, 14 dimensions of reality. In fact, we operate mostly in 3. But the mind has a capacity to experience much more. When you open your mind and open your heart, the sacred comes to you. You
Okay,
ask,
This is interesting.
and the energy flows into you. And it changes you, and you work with it. And working with it is casting a spell.
All right, that is interesting right there. So, one, this is not just strictly a Wiccan practice. This is something that a lot of religions do. So, like a lot of Eastern religions will meditate to be one with nature or to experience something with the gods or to have some sort of emotional or spiritual reaction or moment or experience. That is not necessarily just a Wiccan thing. That is across a lot of different religions. And again, when it comes down to this sort of practice, here's where I would say as a Christian is why we would start calling it potentially, at the very least, at the worst, at the best, it's just you giving yourself over to your emotions and giving yourself over to your own mental wants and wanes, and you're just giving yourself up to your heart, which the heart is deceitful and desires a lot of evil, so your heart's going to lead you astray in a lot of cases. But that's at the best case scenario. Worst case scenario, you're opening yourself up to demons, opening yourself up to spirits. They don't care if you actually worship them. Like, the one thing that I think people often get wrong outside of Christianity is that they believe Satan just desires people to worship him. No, the Satan doesn't actually desire people to worship him. If they worship him, he'll take it. It's not like he's going to deny them to worship him. But his main goal is just to turn people away from God and to have people pursue their own desires. So, like in the Garden of Eden, within Genesis, the Bible, the serpent, what it said is, what did God actually say? No, he knows that you're going to become like gods, and that's why he doesn't want you to eat the fruit. That was the Satan's tempt. He didn't say, bow down to me. He didn't say, serve me and worship me. He said, do your own thing. Become your own gods. And so this whole idea that we're going to open ourselves up to the spiritual realm, open ourselves up to what our experiences and our emotions have to say, that is you potentially opening yourself up to demons, potentially opening yourself up to experiences that are going to lead you astray and make you think you're your own God and that you're way more superior than you actually are, forgetting your finiteness and your humanness and your sinfulness. Now, that is, again, coming from a Christian perspective. She can say that I am projecting my beliefs onto her, but that's what we do with our beliefs. We have belief systems, and that's how we view the world. And that view and those belief systems change and adjust and become more nuanced as we have more experiences, as we learn more, as we go through logical debates within ourselves and with other people. So those type of things change and adjust. We need to have respectful conversations. Like, I would love to sit down with a Wiccan and actually talk about these things, because I think it would be very interesting. Like, if any Wiccans would have willing to come on my show, I would talk with them and talk about belief systems. I wouldn't let myself become a vessel for casting of spells because I wouldn't feel comfortable doing that as a Christian, but I would at least talk belief systems with them, because I still love people and I still want to reach people. I still want to understand people. So this is just coming from a Christian giving his perspective and telling you how we see the world and things that we believe to be true and why we think this is dangerous. I don't think this is healthy.
It was you had to find 5 very rare herbs, mix
Yes.
them together in a concoction of your own blood and the blood of some random person, and then you have to mix it up and mash it together.
Have a good
Good
trip
And then
to
you have to
Florida.
drink it
or
6
not planning
times.
to Florida. Have a good trip
Where
to
did you
Florida
hear
this summer.
this? Stop going on witch talk.
And then all your dreams will manifest.
A good spell opens your heart, asks for what you need. And then if you wish to enhance, you know, the asking, you can add herbs and oils. There's an artistry to it. And it can be very beautiful. But it doesn't have to be anything more than breathing or drinking water or making an offering.
Magic potentially involves a lot of things. People who will tell you that if you make a wish on your birthday candles and you blow those out, like that's a type of spell. Lots of people have different perspectives. All of that potentially is magic. To me, magic
Interesting.
can be a useful tool for kind of controlling those things that we might think of as coincidence or luck. It's not going to fix everything. It puts enough things into play where the thing that I am hoping will happen has a better chance of happening. There are people.
I'm kind of curious, like, what's the logic behind a lot of this? Now, again, as a Christian and as someone who believes in the existence of Satan, demons, and supernatural things, I do believe that there is the capability of supernatural things happening outside of, you know, the church or things like that. But also, sometimes at best, people do these things to feel like they have a sort of sense of power, even though you can never really prove them wrong, but you never could prove them right either, really. It's just like, oh, it feels like I have a sense of power. I have this feeling. And it's very just feeling based. So again, at best, it's just you following your heart and your experiences and your feelings, and it really has nothing to it. It's just a big lie that you like to believe that makes you feel better. Or at worst, you're opening yourselves up to spirits that may or may not, that probably don't have your best interest in mind. So I just think that's just interesting because, like, this is like something you can't really prove. It's just like, oh, I have this feeling. And I don't really know where, like, I wonder where they get these practices from, like these herbs and these salts and these things like that. I wonder where all this comes from. If it's just some sort of tradition that they developed over the years.
People who are very bookish, and there are ancient traditions of magic that we could study and we could potentially master. There are recipe books out there.
And do they work?
They can, yeah. I know, that sounds very coy.
Very up for interpretation.
Some people are
I
in
would
this
agree.
camp that says, here's a spell, and the elements of it by themselves are powerful. There are other people who it's a creative act. It's something that it's born in the same way that you might write a song or make a piece of visual art.
So it's a piece of art,
Yeah,
and it makes you feel a certain way, and it might change your actions.
totally.
So there isn't a general sense of here's a recipe or an equation for you to follow, and
Yeah.
what works for me will work for you. It really is individual by individual.
I can give you a recipe, but if you've got no heart in that recipe, I don't think it's going to work as well for you.
I think if I remember correctly, he's going to say something about the lines like, well, if you just change how you believe and change how you think,
An example
it's
of
going to change
magic.
how you behave,
I was in
which
law
might change your
school,
results in
and
life.
I started having dreams that came true. One of the dreams that I kept having was a woman who would appear in the dream. She was bare-chested, and she had a crown on her head and a light at her throat. And she was holding a book. A friend of mine took me to have my tarot cards read by a woman who she said was a witch. Does a spread. She sees things that I've discussed with nobody. I'm impressed. We're all done. She says, I have a women's circle. I think you might be interested. You might find what you're looking for there. Shake her hand politely. I say, thank you. That's very kind. I pay her. I'm out the door. These are witches. Witches, circles, no. She said, well, you should think about it. I go back to the Metropolitan Museum of Art in New York, and I'm walking into a new wing of sculptures. And suddenly, like you're seated next to me, in front of me, is the woman in my dreams. It was a statue carved out of marble. Instead of a book, she's holding a rolled up sheaf of papers. I looked at the little plaque next to her toes, and it said, the Libyan Sibyl. And I looked up Sibyl, and it said, an ancient prophetess, comma, a witch. The universe is speaking to you. The sacred is showing itself to you.
Interesting.
So it's more of a question of
This could be just obviously coincidence. If you're an atheist or something like that, you would say this has to be coincidence. I am one to believe that it doesn't necessarily need to be coincidence. It could be influenced by some sort of spiritual realm. But we have sometimes this delusion as people that anything that's supernatural that happens must be from God or must be from the universe or must be from some good being, when in reality, a lot of religions believe in good and evil supernatural beings that have influence into the world. So as far as Christians go, we are to discern the spirits. We are to pray, to discern spirits, to follow the truth of the scriptures, to discern what's good and evil, because demons and devils and Satan himself, which Satan's not an omnipresent being. A lot of times when people are being influenced by spirits, it's probably demons. But demons and devils and stuff like that have influence in the world and will come as angels in light, or come as wolves in sheep clothing. They won't just come outright and look evil. They'll look enticing and draw people in and then eventually destroy their lives. So there is a possibility that this was influenced by supernatural beings. There was something within, quote unquote, the universe that was influencing her. Doesn't necessarily mean it was good.
Of if you are listening.
You have to listen, you have to look, you have to open, and you have to ask the question.
And I would love nothing more than to talk about BetterHelp for just a quick second, because they're sponsoring this more affordable alternative, or even speak over the phone.
We're not sponsored.
That's not something that
so
you're comfortable
I don't need to
with.
give them free advertising.
Spell.
What would those spells look like? Are you allowed to say, or is that secret?
I'll share it with you.
There's no cameras rolling, so don't worry.
No, that's good. It's all.
just you and
I
me here.
believe you,
I totally turned off the cameras.
and I am very gullible.
Okay.
So let's go.
Good, let's go.
I'm going to ask you to think about prosperity and success, whatever that looks like for you.
I already got prosperity and success. See, look around me.
I mean, I see some things that could be
I'm in
improved
this
upon.
$7 billion studio with 45 associates who help me at every single moment.
I mean,
couldn't
you've
ask
got me
for more.
here with you, so that's pretty.
And you are a hefty penny.
I am. So fundamentally, what you're going to do, you're going to make yourself a little bag. We're going to put some stuff in it.
Okay.
We're going to decide that it's magical.
Okay, so it's a decision. It's an internal belief.
I think so. Yeah.
Okay.
So here's what you're gonna do first.
Interesting.
I brought a bunch of little pouches. They're in different colors. And I want you to think, like, if you were gonna bring success or prosperity into your life, like, give me a color association.
I am going to go with the green bag. It's got multiple different textures, and the fact that it looks handmade, to me, feels like more connection to the earth.
Okay, so now I wanna think about these herbs. What might you pick, like, as kind of our base?
I think the base would be spearmint. I feel like this is most associated with taking care of yourself, associated with brushing your teeth and having a minty mouth.
Yeah, your day's gonna go better if you brush your teeth. Okay. So now I want to look at some of these other objects we have here. Some of this was in, like, I've got a little cuff on my desk with, like, interesting stones.
I see 3 objects
What do
here
you
that I
see?
immediately would be gravitated toward.
What are they?
First off would be this shiny little.
That's pyrite.
It's beautiful. I think the color goes really well with the bag that we have
It's
here.
also called fool's gold. And again, we have that association with wealth, with prosperity.
And then the amethyst. I have
This
a connection.
whole thing is just interesting to me because, one, again, at best, it's just nonsense that is just you following your heart, and if it doesn't work out, I guess you can't really prove it one way or the other. But again, at worst, it's something, I guess, different. But it's just one of those things where I see this and I'm honestly genuinely confused. Because there's obviously public speakers who are secular or atheists or whatever and say, just have positive thoughts, believe in yourself, and you can accomplish anything. That's a very common mantra within secular motivational speakers. It seems like you're doing almost the exact same thing in this sort of scenario, but you're adding a sort of pagan, sort of witchcraft, sort of ritualistic vibe to it that's more spiritual in nature and less secular in nature to give you the extra feelings of confidence, I guess. I'm not entirely sure. So it's just interesting to me that it's sort of a spiritualized version of mental realization of your dreams or something like that. And again, the thing that bothers me the most about this is it's all self-centered. The purpose of love is to be sacrificing for the greater good of others. The purpose of love is to put others before yourself. And the purpose of kindness and charity, the purpose of mercy is to lay down your life in a way that serves others to help bring others up. And the purpose of righteousness is to live a righteous life. And sometimes that means denying your inner desires, denying your inner passions that may be harmful to others and harmful to yourself. But all this is all about is, one, becoming more and more powerful, letting yourself become more powerful, feeling like you're more in control, trying to realize for yourself wealth, prosperity, and all these things. It's all self-centered. What can I gain from magic? What can I gain from the world? What can the universe give me? And it becomes very self-focused, and it doesn't become outward focused, which I think is a big problem when it comes to our society, and it creates more problems than good. Again, this is just coming from a Christian belief. And I'm saying this because I do think, in general, this is a sort of dangerous practice. But, again, I would be interested in actually talking to someone from this background, from this faith, to learn more about them, because I don't hate them. I still love them because they're still people, and I still want to, I still think they have dignity and respect. I want to understand them better, and I would be interested in learning more about what they actually believe and the roots of it. But in general, by what I'm seeing, this is not healthy or necessarily good thing to partake in.
With this from when I was younger,
Okay.
because I used to like to collect rocks. I was a really cool kid that liked to collect rocks. And then this one here, I think the light traveling through it is really beautiful.
I love that you're putting yourself in there too. The last thing you're going to do is write what is often called a petition. I'm not going to read it, and you don't have to share it with anybody else.
Okay.
And you don't even have to write words. You can draw a symbol that's important to you. If you've got song lyrics that are meaningful to you, something that just speaks to the prosperity that you want to bring into your life.
I drew a waterfall. I feel like it's a reminder to go with the flow, and how even when it feels like you are falling, you'll still end up back in the water on your journey, flowing forward.
I like it.
Mm.
Great.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what you're doing now.
And should I be popping it in here?
Yeah.
Okay,
And that's
feels good.
yours. And you're going to keep that forever and ever, or until you feel like it's done its job with you,
Mhm.
and place it wherever.
And that could have a huge, profound effect on the way that I go about my life. But is it all here?
Even if you finished
From a
your
second
spell,
perspective,
whatever
you're
it
gonna
is,
think
and you
it
feel like
has
it
to be just all
hasn't
up in your
worked,
head.
I think that there's still value just in the fact that you performed it at all. If we think that magic is art, then it's equally valuable to sit down and create and not worry about the outcome. Let's say it is all in my head. Let's say that it's a placebo and I'm casting some kind of spell because like I'm very anxious about a school test, or I'm very anxious about whatever. Like just the process of sitting down and going through something like this, I find calms my anxiety. And at that point, who cares?
Who cares if it's a placebo, because placebos work? The belief in something working is enough to make it work.
Interesting.
Sometimes.
But why wouldn't
And
you
that's something
just
else that I think makes
replace it
Wicca
with a different
weird, and why I
places that
kind of
weren't
hesitate around the
true?
idea of
I'm not sure.
belief. Because to me, belief may not be the most important thing. Sometimes just the doing it is important.
Well, thank you for this, and I will leave it up to my interpretation to see what comes from this.
Magic.
Thank you.
Anthony's
That
a
was
witch
great.
now.
I am a witch. Do you find that people tend to be
I can see why this
skeptical
guy is
when
popular,
they
though.
hear about
He has an
being a
entertaining
witch,
personality.
when they hear about what types of benefits and things this brings you?
Step into a familiar home of possibility where sound
Probably not copyright.
So the first reaction, even now, amongst too many people, that either you're wacky or you're satanic, it's just tedious. But as soon as you explain, look, it's an ancestral indigenous wisdom tradition. Totally has nothing to do with any of those stereotypes. Those were visited upon people because of the church, because of its hostility, because it wanted complete political and religious control. I mean, I've tried to engage with fundamentalists of various stripes, and generally speaking, it doesn't matter what your faith is. If it's not theirs, they're not listening.
I mean, I've been Wiccan for my entire adult life. I was exploring it as a teenager, and I wasn't raised in a religious household. And when I started, particularly going to college, particularly like in the Southeast, most of the people who I know were raised in some kind of Christian household. And that stuff isn't less weird than what I do. Believing in bodily resurrection
So people
is
might think
not...
that I would get really defensive about this, but I actually don't necessarily disagree. I believe whenever we view other religions, we always think something that they do is weird. So, for instance, if you're an atheist, you would believe that most religions are just weird because you don't understand why they would believe in something they can't see or believe in God or anything like that. If you're a Muslim, you're going to believe something that Christians believe is weird because you don't understand why they would believe that or why they would think that to be true. If you're a Christian, you're going to think, like, this is a common thing that we experience. So I agree. The things that I believe as a Christian is going to appear very weird to people who don't believe it because they don't believe it. They don't think it's true. They don't think there's any power in it. They think it's just ridiculous on its face, whatever. That's common across the board. So I don't necessarily deny that point. I think that's true. I do find testimonies and how people come to their beliefs very interesting, and I think it's important to listen to how people
More
believe what they believe.
reasonable than what you and I just did.
Right.
Like, personally, I just wish that we all could appreciate that if it's weird, at least we're all weird.
What I find interesting is that so many religions are accepted as faith in this religion. We should not question it. But with something like Wiccans, people immediately have assumptions about what it means, even if these beliefs have been around for potentially thousands of years, longer than the widespread accepted religions of today.
Unfortunately, a lot of religious institutions, they become institutions and they become political institutions as a result. There are always people who practice their faiths who are made better by their faiths. But there are a lot of people who are not, and they are very often in the hierarchies. So power and control, fear of women, and it hangs on. So we have to work very hard to disabuse people of all of those negative stereotypes and lies.
I never really thought about how the terms magic and spellcasting can mean something entirely different based on your previous exposure to the words.
Yeah.
What if magic really is all just a matter of setting your intentions and opening yourself up for interpretations that align with that intention? If I cast a spell to have a good day, am I more likely to have a good day because of that, because of my intention to do so?
I mean,
Whether it's a placebo or something more, doesn't matter if it actually works.
I mean, that is actually an interesting question to end with, because that's all based on what you think the meaning of life is. If the purpose of life is to be happy, is to fulfill yourself, to, I don't know, live a life that pleases your wills, then sure, I guess in theory, if it works, it works. But if the meaning of life is to honor God, then obviously what does God desire from you would be the most important question. If the meaning of life is to help others, then would mean helping others is the most important thing. So it boils down to honestly what the meaning of life is, to say whether or not if it works, and that's all that should matter. So belief, philosophy, religion, and theology play a part into making action actually reasonable. So we need to be able to develop beliefs that make sense so that we can do practices and do things that actually apply to a reasonable belief system. Therefore, we can know, at least to the best of our knowledge, know that we're doing something that is actually beneficial and meaningful to the world we live in. But this was an interesting video, an interesting exploration into Wiccan belief. I found it interesting. I enjoy learning about different faiths, different religions, different practices. I don't agree with it. I do think there are things that are dangerous about it. I do think in general it's just not a good idea. But again, I would be open to talking to a Wiccan or talking to someone from this belief system and learning more about what they have to say and what they think. And I'd be interested in just listening to what they have to say, because listening is the first step to understanding and to creating a better culture where we can actually talk about important religious things, important political things, important things. Because listening is the first step. If we don't listen, we shout accusations not knowing what we're talking about. So I would love to listen more. I would love to talk to more people. And yeah, so this was enjoyable. I enjoyed it. And if you guys enjoyed it, thank you for joining in on the live stream. Thank you for those who participated in the live chat. I always appreciate it. Always enjoy you guys coming on here. And I am very just grateful for this channel and the community we are building here together. So thank you for joining me. And hopefully if you enjoyed what you do, like, subscribe, join the Light the World community. We're continually growing here, continually delving into these religions and just staying interesting. And so always just enjoy you guys being here. Comment what you believe about Wicca. Comment what you think about angels, demons. Do they exist? Do they not exist? How do they influence the world? Let me know in the comments down below. And let me know if you believe in magic or if you believe in these things at all. So thank you. And as always, friends, before I close out, I want you all to go out there and light the world.